The first time Vivian Hawthorne tested Amara, she did it with a smile so polished it felt like glass. It was late afternoon in the Hawthorne house, the kind of mansion that stayed quiet even when it was full, because the carpets were thick and everyone learned to walk softly. Amara stood in the front sitting room, hands folded, shoulders relaxed, trying not to look like she was trying. Vivian sat opposite her on a cream sofa, legs crossed, pearls at her throat, a cup of tea untouched in her hand. On the marble coffee table between them sat a velvet tray, and on that tray sat a diamond necklace. It was the kind of necklace that made the air around it look expensive. Vivian tipped her head, studied Amara's face like she was reading a menu. "Elliot has always been generous," Vivian said, voice gentle. "To the wrong people sometimes." Amara kept her expression calm. "He's generous because he cares." Vivian's smile widened by a millimeter. "I suppose we'll see," she said. "Won't we?" A quiet pause settled in. Then Vivian slid the velvet tray towards Amara, nice and slow. "Try it on," she said. Amara didn't move right away, not because she wanted it, but because she could feel the trap sitting under the diamonds like a pin under a cushion. She looked at the necklace, then back at Vivian. "I'm not really a diamonds at tea time person," Amara said, friendly, light. Vivian gave a small laugh as if Amara had made a joke. "Oh, darling, if you're going to marry my son, you'll become one." In the corner of the room, a grandfather clock ticked with a steady, patient rhythm. Amara reached out, careful, and lifted the necklace by its clasp. It was heavier than it looked, and as she held it up, she noticed something else. The clasp was already open. That tiny detail, the clasp already open, made her stomach tighten. It would be so easy for it to fall, so easy for a diamond to go missing, so easy for a story to be told. Amara didn't put it on. Instead, she set it back down exactly where it had been and pressed the clasp shut with her thumb until it clicked. Then she slid the tray back to Vivian with the same calm pace. "I don't want to wear anything that isn't mine," she said, "not unless Elliot gives it to me himself." Vivian's eyes sharpened just for a moment. Then the smile returned. "Very principled," Vivian said. "That's refreshing." Amara smiled back, soft and steady. "Principles are cheaper than diamonds," she replied, "but they cost more to lose." Before we get into the rest, quick one. If you're watching from the US, the UK, the Caribbean, Africa, anywhere at all, drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. And if you're here for stories about dignity, fairness, and real accountability, hit like and subscribe. All right, back to it. Amara met Elliot Hawthorne 6 months earlier at a charity event she hadn't even planned to attend, not because she was chasing a billionaire, because she was chasing a grant. Amara ran a small community program that helped teens learn practical skills, coding, trades, budgeting, confidence, the stuff that kept you afloat when life did not care if you could swim. The venue had been a hotel ballroom. Everyone had looked shiny and certain of themselves. Amara had looked like someone who had ironed her dress on a chair because she didn't have time to set up an ironing board. She'd brought her best smile anyway. At the end of her pitch, a man in a dark suit approached her with a quiet, thoughtful expression. Not hungry, not flashy, just present. "That was the first honest thing I've heard all night," he'd said. Amara blinked. "You mean my pitch?" "I mean you," he replied. "You didn't perform for us. You spoke like the kids were in the room." She'd laughed then, a small, surprised laugh. "And you are?" He'd offered his hand. "Elliot." She'd taken it. Amara. He hadn't introduced himself as a billionaire, and she hadn't asked. It wasn't until later, when someone near the stage whispered his surname with reverence, that Amara realized who he was. She'd considered walking away right there. Not because she thought rich people were all bad, but because rich families came with gates you could not see until they swung shut behind you. Elliot asked her out anyway, and when she tried to keep it simple, coffee, a walk, something normal, he agreed with visible relief. Their dates were oddly quiet for someone with his profile. No paparazzi drama, no loud declarations, just him showing up, listening, remembering the things she said, like they mattered. One night they ended up at a tiny late cafe, the kind with mismatched chairs and cheap napkins. Elliot watched Amara stir her tea for too long. "You do that when you're thinking," he said. Amara froze, then smiled. "Do what?" "That," he said, nodding at the spoon. "Stir in a perfect circle, like you're trying to make the world behave." Amara let out a soft breath. "I grew up in a home where the world didn't behave," she said. Elliot's eyes softened. "Me too," he admitted, surprising her. "Just in a different way." He didn't talk badly about his family. He didn't need to. There was a heaviness in the way he said, "me too," that did the talking for him. When Elliot proposed, it wasn't on a yacht or in front of cameras. It was in Amara's small office after she'd stayed late sorting donated laptops. She'd been wearing trainers and a hoodie. Her hair was wrapped in a scarf because she'd been too tired to style it. Elliot held out a ring and said, "You make spaces safer, even when you're exhausted. I don't want to visit your life. I want to be part of it." Amara had stared at him for a long moment. Then she'd said, "If we do this, I'm not marrying your money. I'm marrying your choices." Elliot nodded once. "That's what I'm offering." So she said yes. And 3 days after she said yes, Vivian Hawthorne invited her to tea. Not to welcome her, to measure her. After the diamond necklace test, Vivian didn't stop. She just got quieter about it. The Hawthorne house became a place where little traps sat under pretty surfaces. One morning, Amara woke up to find a designer handbag placed neatly on a chair in her room. A note lay on top in elegant handwriting. "Every future Mrs. Hawthorne needs the right accessories. Love, Vivian." Amara stared at the bag. Then she turned it over. Inside, tucked in a side pocket, was a wad of cash. Too much cash. Enough cash to create a story. Amara carried the bag downstairs, straight into the breakfast room where Vivian sat at the head of the table, scrolling on her tablet like she ran the morning. Elliot had already left for a meeting. Amara placed the bag gently on the table. "I think something's been left inside," Amara said. Vivian looked up, eyes calm. "Oh?" Amara opened the pocket and lifted the cash without counting it. She didn't wave it around. She just held it up long enough for the truth to be undeniable. Vivian's mouth tightened. "Keep it," Vivian said smoothly. "It's a gift." Amara set it down. "I can't accept cash gifts I didn't ask for," she said. "It makes things unclear." Vivian leaned back, studying her. "You're very careful," Vivian said. "I've learned to be," Amara replied. "Careful keeps people honest." Vivian's eyes flicked sharp again. Then she smiled, as if amused. Amara left the breakfast room feeling the house watching her, not with eyes, with silence. But as she walked down the hallway, she noticed something else. At the far end, near the service door, a young housekeeper stood with a laundry basket pressed to her hip, staring at the floor as if she'd been told not to exist. Her name tag read, Lanny. Lonnie's shoulders were tense, like she was waiting for blame. Amara slowed. "Morning," Amara said warmly. Lonnie startled, then nodded quickly. "Morning, ma'am." Amara heard it. That ma'am that didn't sound respectful. It sounded afraid. Amara kept her tone gentle. "Are you all right?" Lonnie forced a smile so fast it looked painful. "Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am." Amara felt a small ache in her chest. "You don't have to apologize for standing," Amara said quietly. Lonnie's eyes flickered up, surprised, then back down. Amara didn't push. She just nodded once and continued on, but she carried that "sorry, ma'am" with her all day. Later that week the tests shifted. Less about stealing, more about loyalty. Vivian hosted a small luncheon with women who looked like they had never had to check their bank balance before buying grapes. They wore neutral colors and sharp smiles. Amara wore a simple dress in her own calm. Halfway through lunch, a family friend named Charles leaned closer to Amara when Vivian stepped away. "You're lovely," Charles said, voice smooth. "And you're very Different. Amara smiled politely. Different how? Charles glanced towards the doorway. Elliot is a kind man, but he's busy. He doesn't always notice what's right in front of him. Amara understood immediately. This wasn't flirtation. This was bait, Charles continued. If you ever need anything, advice, support, a private account, I could help you. Quietly. Amara's smile didn't change, but her eyes cooled. That's generous, she said. But if I need support, I'll speak to my fiancé. Charles chuckled. Some things are easier when you don't involve men. Amara leaned back slightly. Some things are safer when you do, she said, calm. And some things are safer when you don't offer them at all. Charles blinked. Amara sipped her water, unbothered. When Vivian returned, she looked between them like she could smell the outcome. Charles went quiet. Vivian's smile was thin. That night, Elliot came home late. Amara was in the kitchen, barefoot, stirring a pot while the cook, Rosa, supervised with a mildly offended expression. You're teaching me, Amara told Rosa, laughing softly. Because I refuse to be the kind of rich person who can't boil rice, Rosa snorted. You're not rich like that. You are normal rich, still human. Amara laughed again, and she heard Elliot's steps. He walked in, loosened tie, tired eyes. He paused when he saw her at the stove. You're cooking? He asked. I'm learning, Amara said. Elliot's gaze softened. You don't have to prove anything here. Amara turned off the heat and faced him. I'm not proving, she said quietly. I'm bonding. Elliot stepped closer. With who? Amara hesitated. Then, gently, with the people who keep this house alive when no one is looking. Elliot's face shifted, like guilt touched him. He glanced towards the hallway, towards the service side of the house. I don't know their names, he admitted. Amara's voice stayed soft. You should. Elliot swallowed. My mother handles staffing. Amara nodded slowly. I can tell. Elliot reached for her hand. Is she being difficult? Amara didn't answer right away, not because she was protecting Vivian, because she was learning the chessboard before she moved a piece. She's assessing, Amara said. Elliot sighed. She does that. Amara held his gaze. And does anyone ever assess her back? Elliot didn't have an answer. The next test came disguised as paperwork. A folder appeared on Amara's desk in the small study Elliot had given her to use. On top, a letter. Darling Amara, if you truly love Elliot, you'll understand the importance of discretion. Please sign the enclosed confidentiality agreement for the good of the family. Love, Vivian. Amara flipped through the pages. It wasn't a normal NDA. It was a muzzle. It said she could not speak publicly about the family. Fine. But it also said she could not speak to any third party about the household, staff, finances, or internal disputes. It said she waived rights to certain assets in the event of separation. It said she agreed to arbitration chosen by the Hawthorne family. And buried in the middle was a line that made her breath catch. It restricted her ability to report internal personnel matters, staff matters. Amara stared at that line, the words blurring for a second. Because now it wasn't about her. This wasn't just a test to see if she was a fraud. This was a strategy to keep everyone quiet. She closed the folder and walked straight to Elliot's office. He was on a call, but when he saw her face, he held up a finger and muted himself. What's wrong? He asked. Amara placed the folder on his desk. Did you know about this? She asked. Elliot frowned, opened it, scanned. Then his jaw tightened. No, he said. I didn't. Amara pointed at the line about personnel matters. Elliot's eyes tracked it. His expression changed, anger, disbelief, then something like shame. That's not acceptable, he said. Amara nodded. It isn't. Elliot picked up his phone again, unmuted, and ended his call abruptly. Then he stood. I'm going to speak to her, he said. Amara held up her hand. Not yet, she said. Elliot paused. Why not? Amara's voice stayed calm. Because if you confront her now, she'll switch tactics. She'll become the victim. She'll make it about me. And you'll still not see what's happening to the staff." Elliot stared at her, processing. Amara continued gently, "I need you to listen, not react." Elliot swallowed. Then he nodded once. "Okay, I'm listening." That was the first real shift. Not the tests, not the diamonds. The first shift was Elliot choosing to listen instead of defend his mother. After that, Amara started paying attention in a different way. She stopped walking through the house like a guest and started walking through it like a person who cared. She learned names. Rosa in the kitchen, who cooked like love was a duty. Calvin the driver, who spoke little but watched everything. Mrs. Delgado, the head housekeeper, who ran the staff like a quiet general, always polite, always tense. And Lonnie, the young housekeeper who apologized for breathing. Amara noticed the patterns. Staff never used the main staircase unless nobody was around. Staff never ate in the kitchen when Vivian was home. Staff never sat down in any visible area, even during long hours. And when Vivian walked into a room, the staff's shoulders tightened like someone had turned the temperature down. One evening, Amara found Lonnie in the laundry room, folding towels with hands that moved too fast. "Hi," Amara said softly. Lonnie startled again, then forced a smile. "Hi, ma'am." Amara leaned against the doorway. "You can call me Amara." Lonnie's eyes widened, panic flashing. "I can't." Amara's chest tightened. "Why not?" Lonnie swallowed, glancing at the ceiling corners where cameras sat like tiny black eyes. "House rules," she whispered. Amara followed her gaze. Cameras, in the laundry room, in a staff area. Amara's voice stayed steady, but colder now. Who made that rule? Lonnie's lips pressed together, fear overriding honesty. Amara nodded slowly. "Okay." She didn't ask more. But she started noticing every camera, and she started wondering what else was being watched. A few days later, in the staff corridor, Amara caught sight of Mrs. Delgado's hand as she reached for a clipboard. The skin on her knuckles was red and cracked, not from cold, from chemicals, from cleaning, from not having gloves good enough to protect her. Amara waited until they were alone. "Mrs. Delgado," Amara said gently, "can I ask you something?" Mrs. Delgado's posture went stiff, polite. "Of course, ma'am." Amara lowered her voice. "Do you have proper supplies? Gloves, masks, anything you need?" Mrs. Delgado's eyes flickered. "We have what we are given." Amara's voice stayed calm. "And is it enough?" Mrs. Delgado hesitated. Then she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you for your concern," she said carefully. "We manage." Amara heard it. We manage. Not we are treated well, not we are supported. We manage. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay in the huge guest room that Elliot insisted she take until after the wedding, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. The Hawthorne house was so big it made small noises feel lonely. She got up and walked to the kitchen for water. As she passed the staff dining room, she saw a small notice pinned on a board, a printed sheet. "No food taken from main kitchen without approval. Violations will be deducted from wages." Amara stared. Deducted from wages. For food. In a house where fruit bowls sat like decoration, Amara took her phone out and snapped a photo, careful, no flash. Then she walked back to her room, heart pounding. Because now she understood. Vivian wasn't just testing her, Vivian was testing everyone, every day, and the staff were losing. The next morning, Amara did something simple. She made breakfast, not for herself, for the staff. She woke up early, tied her hair back, and went into the kitchen while Rosa was still prepping. Rosa stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "What are you doing?" Rosa asked. Amara smiled. "Pancakes." Rosa looked offended. "In my kitchen?" Amara laughed softly. "With your permission." Rosa sighed dramatically, then handed her a bowl. "If you burn them, I will pretend I don't know you. Amara got to work. It wasn't perfect. The first pancake was too thick, the second was too pale, the third finally looked like something you could serve without shame. When the staff started filtering in, quiet, hesitant, Amara placed plates on the staff dining table and said, "Breakfast is for people who work. Please eat." Nobody moved at first. Mrs. Delgado stood at the doorway like she was deciding whether this was allowed. Amara met her eyes. "I'm not asking," Amara said gently. "I'm inviting." Mrs. Delgado's face tightened. Then she said very softly, "We are not permitted, ma'am." Amara kept her voice calm. "By who?" Mrs. Delgado didn't answer. Amara nodded once. Then she lifted her phone and called Elliot. He answered, voice sleepy. "Amara." Amara turned her back slightly for privacy. "Elliot," she said, "are your staff allowed to eat breakfast?" There was a pause. "What?" Elliot asked. Amara kept her tone even. "I made breakfast. They say they're not permitted." Another pause. Then Elliot's voice sharpened. "Put me on speaker." Amara did. Elliot's voice filled the staff dining room, calm but firm. "This is Elliot Hawthorne," he said. "Everyone in my house is permitted to eat. If you work here, you eat. That's not a question. Please have breakfast." Silence. Then Rosa, brave, muttered, "Finally," under her breath. Someone smiled. Someone else quietly sat down. Then another. And another. The room softened, like a knot loosening. Amara watched Lonnie take a pancake with shaking hands. And for the first time since Amara arrived, Lonnie didn't apologize. That breakfast wasn't glamorous. It wasn't dramatic. But it was a crack in Vivian's control. And cracks, when you keep applying pressure, become breaks. Vivian appeared in the doorway halfway through, perfectly dressed, as always. She took in the scene with one glance, staff eating, Amara pouring orange juice, Rosa pretending not to smile. Vivian's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" she asked, voice calm, dangerous. Amara turned to face her with a polite smile. "Breakfast," Amara said, "for the people who keep this house running." Vivian's smile was thin. "That's not necessary." Amara's tone stayed light. "Food usually is." Vivian stepped closer. "I don't appreciate you disrupting the structure," she said. Amara held her gaze. "And I don't appreciate people working hungry," Amara replied. "We all have preferences." Vivian's eyes flashed. Then she turned to the staff. "Back to work," she said sharply. The room froze. Mrs. Delgado started to stand. Amara lifted her hand gently. "Finish your food," Amara said, voice calm but firm. "Please." The staff hesitated, caught between orders. Vivian's voice sharpened. "Amara." Amara didn't look away. "Elliot said they can eat," Amara said. "If that's a problem, you can discuss it with him." Vivian's nostrils flared. Then, with a controlled smile, she said, "Of course. We will discuss many things." She walked out. The air stayed tight for a moment. Then Rosa exhaled loudly. Mrs. Delgado looked at Amara with an expression that wasn't quite gratitude yet. It was something like hope mixed with fear. After breakfast, Amara didn't go back to being quiet. She started documenting. Nothing illegal, nothing invasive, just facts. Photos of wage deduction notices, notes on supply shortages, times, dates, places. She spoke to Calvin on a drive and asked gently, "Do staff have contracts that protect them?" Calvin's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "No," he said. Amara kept her voice calm. "Have there been deductions from pay?" Calvin's jaw worked. "Yes," he said quietly. Amara nodded, staring out the window, voice soft. "Do you know why?" Calvin hesitated, then said, "For mistakes, for attitude, for food, for replacing things that were already old." Amara swallowed. "That's not right," she murmured. Calvin didn't look at her. "No," he agreed. That evening, Amara asked Elliot to meet her in the study. He came in, tired but attentive. Amara laid out what she had, photos, notes, The NDA folder, a list of questions. Elliot's face hardened as he read. "This can't be true," he said, but his voice sounded like he already knew it could be. Amara kept her tone gentle. "It's true, and it's happening in your home." Elliot ran a hand over his face. "My mother," he said quietly. "She's always been strict. I thought it was organization. I thought she was keeping things running smoothly." Amara leaned forward slightly. "She's keeping them silent," Amara said. "There's a difference." Elliot stared at the photos again. The wage deduction notice, the camera in the laundry room, the clause in the NDA. His voice turned rough. "Why would she do this?" Amara's eyes softened. "Control feels like safety to some people," she said. "But it never stays contained. It leaks onto everyone." Elliot swallowed. Then he looked up at Amara. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Amara held his gaze. "I want staff protections," she said. "Written, enforced, independent. And I want your mother to stop treating human beings like furniture." Elliot nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "Tell me how." Vivian's biggest test came right after that. It came in the form of an offer. Vivian invited Amara into her sitting room again. Same polished smile, same untouched tea. This time there was a small envelope on the table. Vivian slid it towards her. Amara didn't touch it. "What's this?" Amara asked. Vivian smiled sweetly. "A solution," she said. "Elliot is infatuated. He's stubborn, but he's also persuadable. Eventually." Amara's stomach tightened. Vivian continued, voice smooth. "This is a generous sum. Enough to fund your little program for years. Enough to move anywhere you like. Enough to begin again without the burden of this family." Amara stared at the envelope. "So this is a bribe," she said softly. Vivian tilted her head. "It's compassion. I'm sparing you." Amara's smile turned sad. "You're trying to buy silence," Amara said, "and you're calling it compassion." Vivian's eyes chilled. "You don't belong here, Amara. You may have fooled Elliot with your humility, your little breakfasts, your friendly smiles, but I know what people want." Amara leaned forward slightly, voice calm. "Do you?" she asked. "Because what I want is very simple." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "And what is that?" Amara held her gaze. "A home where people are treated like people." Vivian's smile vanished. "Don't be dramatic," she snapped. Amara stood, leaving the envelope untouched. Then she said something that made Vivian's face go still. "You've been testing me," Amara said, "but you should know something." Vivian's eyes sharpened. "What?" Amara's voice was steady. "You failed your own test," she said. Vivian's lips parted slightly. "Excuse me?" Amara kept her tone polite but firm. "You tried to tempt me with jewelry, with cash, with men, with contracts, with money to leave. You wanted to prove I'm a fraud," Amara said. "But what you've actually proven is that you don't trust anyone because you don't behave in a trustworthy way." Vivian's cheeks flushed. Amara continued, calm and clear. "And while you were watching me, I was watching you." Vivian's eyes flashed. "How dare you?" Amara nodded once. "Yeah," she said softly. "That's what people say when they're used to being untouchable." Vivian rose to her feet. "You will not threaten me in my home," she said, voice shaking with controlled rage. Amara didn't flinch. "This isn't your home," Amara replied. "It's Elliot's, and it's theirs too." She nodded toward the staff corridor. Vivian's eyes followed the gesture, then snapped back to Amara. "This ends now," Vivian hissed. Amara's voice stayed steady. "It ends when you stop," she said, "not when you get caught." Amara walked out of the room with her heart pounding, but her posture straight, because she knew what came next. Vivian would escalate, and she did. Within 2 days, Vivian arranged a family meeting, a pre-wedding gathering. In the grand drawing room, chandeliers lit, flowers everywhere, like beauty could distract from cruelty. Elliot's uncle attended, aunt attended, a couple of board members, and Charles, the family friend, sat with a smug expression like he expected a show. Vivian stood at the front with a folder in her hand, like a judge about to deliver a verdict. Amara sat beside Elliot. Elliot's hand found hers under the armrest. He squeezed once, a silent promise. Vivian began. "I have always protected this family," she said. "I have always protected Elliot." She turned towards Amara. "And I have tried to welcome Amara," Vivian continued, voice tinged with false sadness. "But I have concerns." Amara kept her face calm. Vivian opened the folder. "I have evidence," she said, "that Amara is using Elliot for access, for influence, for money." There were murmurs. Elliot's jaw tightened. Vivian lifted a printed photo. It was Amara at her office speaking to a man. Vivian's tone turned sharp. "Who is he?" Amara recognized him. It was Marcus, the accountant who helped her program. Vivian flipped to another page. Bank transfers. "Why is money leaving Elliot's account?" Vivian demanded. Elliot snapped. "Because I donated to her program." Vivian raised a hand. "Not donations, transfers." Amara finally spoke, voice calm. "Elliot asked me what I needed," she said. "I told him we needed laptops and a safe bus for the kids. He transferred the funds, with his full knowledge, with receipts, with transparency." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Convenient." Elliot leaned forward. "Mother, stop." Vivian ignored him. Then she delivered the line she'd been building towards. "And," Vivian said, voice trembling theatrically, "I have evidence that Amara has been interfering with staff, creating disorder, undermining house rules." Amara felt the room tighten. Staff. That was the real point. Vivian turned to Elliot, tears suddenly forming. "She is turning you against me," Vivian whispered, "after everything I've done." There it was, the manipulation, performative tears, the guilt, the claim of sacrifice. Elliot's face flickered, pain and anger battling. Amara didn't rush him, she just sat steady. Then Elliot spoke, voice controlled. "Mother," he said, "if you have an issue with Amara, address it, but don't use staff as a shield." Vivian's tears fell. "I am your mother," she said. "I deserve respect." Elliot's voice was quiet but firm. "Respect is not a crown," he replied. "It's a practice." The room went still. Vivian's tears paused like she hadn't expected that line. Amara realized then. Elliot was changing in real time, not because Amara was forcing him, but because truth was forcing him. Vivian turned her gaze to Amara, cold now. "Tell them," Vivian said, voice sharp. "Tell them why you're really here." Amara inhaled slowly. Then she did something Vivian did not anticipate. She stood, not dramatic, not shaky, just steady, and she smiled politely at the room. "All right," Amara said. "Let's talk about why I'm really here." Vivian's lips tightened, satisfied. Amara turned slightly, facing everyone. "I'm here because I love Elliot," she said, "and because I believe people can build something better than what they inherited." Vivian scoffed. Amara continued, calm. "But I'm also here because I've seen how this house works when the cameras are pointed at the wrong people." Vivian's smile faltered. Amara reached into her handbag and pulled out her phone. Vivian stiffened. "What are you doing?" Amara looked at Elliot. "Are we doing this?" she asked him quietly. Elliot's eyes held hers, then he stood too. "Yes," he said, "we are." Murmurs rippled. Amara turned her phone screen outward. "I have photos," she said, voice calm. "Not gossip, not tabloids, house rules, wage deductions, cameras in staff areas, clauses in a contract designed to silence reports of mistreatment." Vivian's face went pale. "That's private," she snapped. Amara's voice stayed steady. "So is abuse," she said, "but it still happens." Vivian stepped forward. "You're lying." Amara shook her head gently. "No," she said. "I'm documenting." Then Elliot spoke, voice cutting through the room. "I reviewed everything," he said, "and I'm investigating payroll immediately. with an independent firm, starting tonight. Vivian's mouth opened, then closed. She looked around, searching for allies. Charles shifted uncomfortably. The uncle frowned. The aunt looked away. Vivian's control was slipping. Amara continued, but she kept it human. This wasn't revenge. It was protection. "I want you all to understand," Amara said, voice softer now. "The staff in this house are not props. They are not tools. They are people who raise your children, cook your meals, clean your rooms, drive your cars, keep your lives running while you sleep." She paused, swallowing emotion. "And they are scared," she added quietly, "in a house that should feel safe." The room was silent. Vivian's voice came out sharp, desperate. "I run a disciplined house. Discipline is not cruelty." Amara looked at her. "Discipline doesn't require hunger," she said. "Discipline doesn't require wage theft. Discipline doesn't require fear." Vivian's eyes flashed with rage. "You think you're better than me?" she hissed. Amara's voice was calm. "I think I'm willing to be accountable," she said. "That's the difference. If you've ever had someone in power call cruelty discipline, drop 'I've seen it' in the comments. And tell me, what do you do when someone weaponizes standards to hide abuse?" Vivian tried one last move. She turned to Elliot and said, voice trembling with hurt, "After everything I sacrificed for you, you will choose her." Elliot's face tightened. For a moment, old loyalty flickered. Then he spoke, voice steady. "I'm not choosing her over you," he said. "I'm choosing right over wrong." Vivian's tears dried up instantly. The performance ended. Her eyes turned cold. "You'll regret humiliating me," she said. Elliot didn't flinch. "No," he replied. "I regret letting you do this in my name." Then Amara said the line that sealed it. "And here's the part you didn't plan for," Amara said softly. Vivian looked at her. Amara held her gaze. "I'm still willing to marry your son," Amara said, "but not under your rules." Vivian's brow furrowed. Amara continued, calm and clear. "As a condition of the marriage, I want staff protections in writing," she said. "Living wage, no wage deductions as punishment, proper supplies, private staff areas with no surveillance, a reporting process with an external ombudsman, anti-retaliation clauses, and therapy support for staff if needed, because fear lingers." Vivian scoffed. "You think you can dictate terms?" Amara's voice stayed steady. "I can dictate my participation," she said. "And Elliot can dictate what happens in his house." Elliot nodded. "Done," he said. "We're doing it." Vivian stared at him like she didn't recognize him. "You are my son," she whispered. Elliot's eyes were sad. "And you are my mother," he said. "That's why I needed to stop you." Vivian's lips trembled, then she turned away sharply, as if turning away could undo what had happened. She walked out of the room with her head high, but her power stayed behind. In the weeks that followed, the Hawthorne house changed, not instantly, not perfectly, but visibly. The wage deduction notices disappeared. New supplies arrived, gloves that didn't tear, masks that fit. A staff pantry stocked with real food and no threats. The cameras in staff areas were removed. An external HR and welfare line was set up, independent, with written protections. Elliot held a meeting with staff, face to face. No mother, no intermediaries. He learned names. He apologized, not performatively, properly. "I didn't see," he told them. "That's my failure. I'm fixing it." Mrs. Delgado looked like she might cry, but she held it in with pride. Lonnie didn't apologize once. Amara watched from the doorway, chest tight, because she knew what it meant. It meant people could breathe. Vivian didn't come to the house for a while. When she did, she moved like a guest in her own myth. She tried to regain control in smaller ways, sharp comments, cold looks. But the staff were different now. They weren't as easily shaken. And Elliot, once he saw the truth, couldn't unsee it. Amara's relationship with Elliot deepened, not through luxury, but through routine. Morning tea together, evening walks without phones. Amara leaving small notes on his desk. "You're doing better today." You listened when it was hard. Proud of you. Elliot started leaving notes back. Thank you for not letting me hide. Thank you for caring about people I ignored. Thank you for staying. The wedding planning shifted too. Less about show, more about meaning. Amara insisted the staff were invited to the reception if they wanted, as guests, not workers. Rosa cried when she received her invitation. Mrs. Delgado stared at hers for a long time, then whispered, I have never been invited to anything like this. Amara squeezed her hand gently. You should have been. On the morning of the rehearsal dinner, Vivian approached Amara in the hallway. Her posture was perfect, but her eyes were tired. I underestimated you, Vivian said quietly. Amara met her gaze. I wasn't trying to be your enemy, Amara replied. Vivian's lips tightened. You humiliated me, she said. Amara's voice stayed gentle. You humiliated them, she replied. I just turned the lights on. Vivian looked away. For a moment she looked older. Then she said something that surprised Amara. My husband used to do those things, Vivian whispered. The control, the punishments, the fear. When he died, I told myself I would never be weak again. Amara's chest softened, but she didn't let it erase accountability. I'm sorry you lived through that, Amara said, but pain doesn't give permission. Vivian swallowed. Then she nodded once, stiffly, and walked away. The night of the rehearsal dinner, Amara stepped onto the terrace for a breath of air. The city lights glittered beyond the estate walls. Elliot joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. He offered one. Amara took it, smiling. Elliot's eyes were soft. I didn't know my home could feel different, he said quietly. I thought it was supposed to be cold, efficient, controlled. Amara sipped her tea. A home can be structured without being cruel, she said. Routine can be love. Elliot nodded slowly. I used to think love was big gestures, he admitted. Now I think it's breakfast, names, gloves that fit. Amara smiled. Exactly. Elliot hesitated, then said, You know what my mother said to me after that meeting? Amara glanced at him. What? Elliot's mouth tightened. She said, If you let staff feel equal, they'll forget their place. Amara's eyes narrowed. And what did you say? Elliot looked at her, voice quiet but firm. I said, if their place depends on fear, then it was never a place worth defending. Amara's chest warmed. She leaned her head against his shoulder for a moment. They stood there, quiet, present. The wedding day came, bright and clean and simple. Not simple in cost, because the Hawthornes did not know how to do cheap, but simple in spirit. Amara walked down the aisle with calm in her body, not because she was stepping into wealth, because she was stepping into truth. The staff sat near the front, dressed beautifully. Rosa wore a dress that made her look like a queen. Lonnie wore a soft yellow outfit and smiled without flinching. Mrs. Delgado held her head high like someone who had survived. Vivian sat in the front row too. Her expression was controlled. But when Amara reached the front and took Elliot's hands, Vivian's eyes shimmered. Maybe not with approval, but with something like surrender. When the vows ended, Elliot and Amara walked back up the aisle together, guests clapping, staff clapping too, smiles real. And for the first time, the Hawthorne house felt like it belonged to more than one kind of person. At the reception, Amara stood and made a short speech. No grand speeches, just truth. I didn't marry into perfection, she said. I married into possibility. And I want this family's legacy to be measured by how we treat the people who hold us up when no one is watching. People applauded. Some looked uncomfortable. Good. Let discomfort do its work. Later that night, after the dancing, Amara walked into the staff lounge. She placed a framed document on the notice board, the Hawthorne House Charter, staff protections, signed. She pinned beside it a handwritten note. Thank you for keeping this house alive. You deserve dignity, always. Love, Amara. Mrs. Delgado stared at it. Rosa covered her mouth. Lonnie blinked hard. Then Lonnie whispered, "No one has ever written us a thank you." Amara smiled gently. They should have. Elliot appeared in the doorway, hands in pockets, watching. Amara turned to him. "Come in," she said. Elliot stepped inside, and for the first time, he stood in the staff room like he belonged there too, not as a king, as a person. He cleared his throat. "I just wanted to say," he began, voice quiet, "I'm sorry it took me so long to see you." Mrs. Delgado nodded once, eyes wet. "We see you now, sir." Elliot swallowed, and then, in a small, warm moment, Rosa handed him a plate of cake and said, "Eat. You're too thin." Elliot laughed, surprised. Amara laughed too. It was a small moment, but it was everything, because healing often looks like that: food, names, laughter, presence. Weeks later, Vivian requested a private meeting with Amara. Not tea, not in the sitting room, in the garden, no cameras, no audience. Vivian stood near the roses, hands clasped. "I am not apologizing," she said immediately, as if she needed to protect her pride. Amara nodded. "Okay," Vivian's eyes tightened, "but I will say this. The staff are different." Amara waited. Vivian looked away, then back. "They stand straighter," she admitted. "They speak more. They don't flinch." Amara's voice was gentle. "That's what safety does." Vivian's jaw worked. Then she said something quiet. "I didn't know how much fear I was carrying," she whispered. Amara's heart softened, but her boundaries stayed firm. "You can heal without harming others," Amara said, "but you have to choose it." Vivian nodded once. Then, almost like it hurt, she said, "You are not what I expected." Amara smiled slightly. "Neither are you." Vivian exhaled, long and slow. Then she turned to leave, and as she walked away, she paused and said, without looking back, "You passed my tests." Amara's voice followed her, calm. "No," she said. "I passed my own." Vivian's shoulders stiffened. Then she kept walking. "Here's the lesson I want to leave you with. People will test you when they're afraid of what you represent, not because you're wrong, but because your integrity exposes their games. And sometimes the biggest power shift isn't a courtroom or a boardroom. Sometimes it's a simple truth spoken out loud with receipts and a refusal to be bullied into silence. Love is not a title. Love is presence. Love is protection. Love is choosing dignity, even when it costs you comfort. And one more thing, a quiet seed, just in case we ever do a part 2. A week after the wedding, Elliot received a call from the family's private banker. There was an old safety deposit box in Vivian's name, one Elliot had never heard of. The banker said it contained documents tied to the Hawthorne Foundation's staffing agreements going back 20 years. Elliot looked at Amara when he heard that, and Amara knew. Some truths don't end. They get uncovered, slowly, properly. If this story hit you, drop a comment. Would you have exposed Vivian publicly or handled it quietly behind closed doors? And if you're here for stories where dignity wins and accountability shows up, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.